Life continues. Life continues.
I really loved the article, and you talk in here about, for whatever reason, and it's a small group, trust me, it's a small group, but they're loud, because I went through this, and voices that don't like you and say mean things really stick with you, for some reason more than voices that say, you're great. So when that was going on after the Oscars, which you should have been celebrating, you won an Oscar, and then all of a sudden you accidentally Googled something, and then this is what you found.
Yeah, and thank you for all the kind things you said in the asking of that question. Yeah, I'd gotten out of the habit of Googling myself because that's just a bad idea to ever do that. And I was trying to come up with my friends and I had an idea for Funny or Die, and we wanted to do something on celebrity pregnancy rumors. So we just Googled pregnancy rumors, and then the story came up. And
what was the story?
The story, the title of it was "Why Does Everybody Hate Anne Hathaway?"
I know.
It's really okay.
No.
It has a happy ending. Life continues.
Yes, but I know what that feels like. And I think when people write things like that or say things like that, it is cyberbullying. And so how did you deal with all that?
Well, I listened at first, and that I couldn't help it. You know, and you try to shut it off, and I couldn't. And then I realized why I couldn't was I hadn't learned to love myself yet. I hadn't gotten there. And if you don't love yourself, when someone else says horrible things to you, a part of you is always going to believe them.
Yep.
And so then it was like, okay, I don't want to believe these people. I don't want to agree with them on any level. I want to figure out who I am. I want to learn who I am, and I don't want to feel like I'm fragile every time I leave the house because I'm so dependent on what other people think about me. So I just took a step back, and as Matthew McConaughey, my co-star and intro would say, I just kept living. And it's been a really cool journey. And I feel like I've arrived in a place where, maybe not every minute of every day, but way more than I used to. I have a tremendous amount of love and compassion for everyone else. And best of all, I have it for myself, which I never enjoyed before.
Good. All right. You know, there's a great phrase that what you think of me is none of my business.
That is so, yes.
And you have to just, and there's nothing wrong with being fragile. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think I'm fragile. I'm extremely sensitive. I cry easily. I'm also a very strong woman, and I also believe in myself. But, people get their feelings hurt. But you can have all those things. You can be fragile. You can be sensitive. You can be strong. And but I think it's just it's hurtful, and people need to know there are other people on the other side of those things.
Live for yourself and what makes you happy. Live for yourself and what makes you happy.
Don't care about other people's opinions. When you step outside and you do what you do, dress and live for yourself, for the satisfaction of yourself. A lot of people do that just so someone can tell them that they're pretty. But the person that you should be waiting to hear "I'm pretty" from is yourself. Kind to yourself. Allow yourself the time to grow. No one is born with perfect confidence, and you need to know that there are tons and tons of other women dealing with the same exact struggle, and you can go through that change at any point in your life. Know that you are on your own clock, you are on your own time, and not to rush yourself.
Can't let other people determine what you wear, how you do your hair. You have to live for yourself and what makes you happy, you know what I mean? So that's why I dress how I dress on my carpets, and I wear a mullet to the Grammys and do what I want, because it's very liberating to just wear something for yourself, and because I feel confident and I feel comfortable in it. Of course people aren't gonna like it, but that's the whole point, is for there to be conversation and talk. If I didn't dress the way I dressed or wear my hair the way I wanted to because people told me that they didn't like it, I would be boring, and I wouldn't be on the cover of this magazine because no one would care. I would never experiment, and I'd never find my confidence. So I would just have a rule that you have to live for yourself and what makes you happy.
Losing is not as bad as you think. Losing is not as bad as you think.
How important is it to you to be popular? are very important. Whether you're a sportsman or you're in business or you know, doing what I do where you make TV shows, nobody does this to become 77th. You know, you always strive to be more successful than your competition. And the day that stopped, you have to stop doing this for a living, genuinely. You have to have that drive. Even as a kid, if I was losing Monopoly, I'd tip the board up.
Seriously? Oh my God. You are ridiculously competitive.
Oh, Piers, coming...
And I think a lot of people say, because you're making so much money, that somehow people like judge you like, oh, he's making this much a year or whatever. But I think what people don't know, because you're, I mean, like Il Divo and Leona Lewis, and I mean, you are so successful and so wealthy, and 15 years ago, you were broke.
Yes.
15 years ago.
Yeah. 15 years ago, I had the equivalent of $7 in my pocket, which was to get me in a cab back to my mum and dad's house.
You had to move back to your mom and dad's house.
I had to sell my house, my car. I had $7, and all I was thinking was, I hope this lasts the cab fare. So I lost everything at the age of, 32, 33, however old I was. But it was honestly the best thing that ever happened in my life, because actually losing it is not as bad as you think. I wasn't embarrassed, and now everything I've got I appreciate, and which I try and say on our show. You actually can get what you want if you have talent, if you're talented, but most importantly, you have to work hard and be patient. So, I kind of went through both.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Good thing about how I made a career was I was patient. If you're going to be good at something, it does take a while. Just enjoy the getting there. You're going to get fed up, you're going to get disheartened, and people are going to tell you you're useless. Had all that. But what I can say, after about 15 or 20 years, I learned how to do something well. And I enjoyed that getting there as much as being there.
Be you.
What you can never change is the effect that the words dumb and stupid have on young people. So we must always be vigilant when those two words get stuck in our throat. Hey, dummy. God, you're so stupid. Just remember that what those leave you with are forever.
And when you found out that you had dyslexia, how did that make you feel?
Well, it was nice to know that I wasn't just lazy, and that I didn't have to sort of explain to people anymore that it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It was just I was having a hard time, because, back in the olden days, they just assumed that you were just lazy and stupid and all these other things. But the thing that crushed me more than anything was I didn't understand how they didn't see that I was smart. I just couldn't figure things the way they were doing it.
You're one of the only people to win an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award.
There's 20 of us.
Oh. What would you say is the most challenging part of having dyslexia, and what advantages do you think it has given you?
I think the advantage is my brain sees and puts information in my head differently. Sometimes more interestingly, I think, than if I saw like everyone else. I think it's less challenging now because we have some idea about it. But I think the challenge will always be how we see ourselves. Not as folks with a handicap, but folks with an interesting perspective on everything.
Sure.
What
advice would you give to a parent who has a child and their child has just been diagnosed with dyslexia?
Stop trying to find a reason that it happened. We don't know why it happened. So it's not your fault. So let that go and start paying attention. So you can understand that I do things differently. You have to pay attention to see how I'm doing stuff. Now, in the old days, when I was a kid, they said, no, she should be in the slow class, because they didn't have words for what was wrong with me. But it didn't seem to stop me. So believe and be you. Be you. Be unique. Be prepared to be alone sometimes when you're unique. It's not a bad thing. Be true to you. And that should make the ride a little more interesting.
be the only.
My father was very, very abusive. And, you know, one of my earliest memories around, you know, the time I was about 4 or 5 years old was my father knocking my mother out. You know, he was an alcoholic. And I just wanted peace, man. It was just violent. You know, I actually wet the bed until I was 14 years old because there was not a peaceful night. You know, I would wake up to screaming, wake up to glass breaking, shouting. One time I woke up, my father was bleeding. My mother had stabbed him, and the police came. And in that day, it was like, you know, there was no such thing as domestic violence, just like there was no such thing as alcoholism. Mm. You know, it was just he can't handle his liquor.
Did you ever try and intervene when your parents were having conflict? Did you ever try and intervene at a young age?
He was too big. I mean, it was one of those things where I felt helpless. I felt 100% like I was so small. Even to this day, you know, we call him Big Terry. He was always Big Terry, and I was Little Terry. Like I say, it was a very, very intense upbringing. And I became this person who just wanted to keep the peace. Anything to keep the peace. I became what you would call a pleaser. Like, Mom, what do you need to do? I'll be a good boy. I promise. I'll sing in the church. I'll sing in the choir. And then my father would come home. It was like, what, do you want another beer? Whatever you want. You know, I'll just make sure you don't get angry, you know? And it was just about, I was exhausted, you know? And I remember just being that tired. And it was a lot of work because I lost all my, like, who I was. It was dependent on who was around, and I was all of a sudden be what they wanted me to be. I'll never forget coming out of therapy, and this guy was like, they were like, Terry, you have to learn how to tell people no, because I was a pleaser. And so I remember being at dinner, and people would be like, can I get an autograph? I'm like, yeah. And I would sign autographs for an hour with my family there. My wife was like, Terry, we're here. We can't even enjoy it. I was like, yeah, but these are my fans. These are the people that pay our bills. And then she's like, you can't tell them no just for an hour? And I couldn't because I was like, I got to please. And I remember being in counseling, and the counselor asked me, she said, what if a director told you to do something you didn't want to do? I said, well, I have to do it. And she was like, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. She said, no, you don't, Terry. I said, well, I'm an actor. She said, yeah, but you don't have to do what everything the director tells you to do. I said, yes, I do, because I'm an actor. And she's like, no, you don't. She said, Terry, I said, you don't have to do that. I said, but I would lose my job. And she said, well, get another job. I said, but I'm an actor. And she said, Terry, you don't have to do what you don't want to do. I didn't know, especially since I was such a pleaser. It was one of them things, well, yeah. And I'll never forget, this guy came up to me and said, hey, man, can I get an autograph? And I was going to do it. I was going to practice. I said, and I looked at him, I said, no. And he said, come on, man. I said, no. And I went crazy. And the guy was like, dude, relax, man. And I was like shaking. It was the first time I was exercising this no. And I was shaking. I got back in the car and I said, I thought I was going crazy. But what I was doing was dissecting and piecing and understanding who I was.
I'm trying to figure out, you were an NFL player, it didn't go great for you there.
Right.
And then you arrive in LA, and without acting training, like extensive acting training, without coming from Hollywood, in your 30s, you managed to build this career and become a really successful actor. You spent the first 2 years in LA, pretty broke, working jobs.
Security.
Yeah, jobs people want to work. But then you rise from that point to become this tremendously successful actor in a completely different field at a time in life where people would consider pretty late to get into acting in your 30s. What was it about Terry that made him successful?
I had like 3 jobs at the same time. It was actually illegal. I was doing 3 movies at the same time one time. You can't do that. But I didn't tell anybody. But I was that focused. I was like, man, I'm here. And I can show them. I can be beyond. And see, for me, the NFL, for me, it was not about catching ability, throwing ability. It was my ability to take tremendous amounts of pain. That was a skill in the NFL. I could take a lot of pain. I could endure a lot. And so I was like, I'm just going to be unstoppable.
When you start doing the work with the therapist and you start unpacking a lot of this stuff, how does this change your relationship with work?
Oh, it became where, hey man, you're good because you're you. One thing that changed for me is I stopped competing with people. Don't try to be the best. Be the only. Be the only. There's only one Terry Crews. If you want Terry Crews, you gotta get Terry Crews. You know, you see in scripts they're like Terry Crews type. You know, I don't know. I love everybody. I love The Rock. I love Kevin Hart. I love all these other guys. But I'm Terry Crews. You never be like me. And I'll never be like them. And I went, oh my God, so much pressure off. You see what I'm saying? It's like, whoa, now I'm working because I like it. I'm not working because I got to prove it and keep up with all of it. And he's got 2 houses. I need 3. Because this is another thing. I started to ask myself, what am I missing? Am I missing anything? I'm not. If I got 1 house, am I missing something? No, I'm the only. And by being the only, you are the best. That's it.